Does he have a presentation?
We've got something which we've worked on. We were hoping, though, let me try and see if I can sort of start things going. We wanted very much Kiama to do this because he is very skilled in this area. He himself has been on the journey of publication himself with his own doctorate. And so we very much wanted him to present. But let me try and see if I can pick up and be a faint echo of what we wanted to share. We circulated around beforehand a handout where we encouraged participants to think about 3 questions, and if I can share my screen, I will get those questions up for you now. Right now, does that coming up? Can people see that?
You can see it.
So these were the 3 questions. What are you researching? Who's the intended audience you want to communicate your research to? How will you communicate your research to this audience? And we would hope, please, that members of Kiama.
Yes.
There.
Okay, that's good.
Right, Kiama, we've got as far as some questions.
Okay,
I've
that's fine.
Could you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
And could you hear me whilst I was talking previously?
Yes.
So you know everything that I've said. I'm now going to hand over to you to take us forward from this point, whilst I've had to do a pale imitation of standing in for you.
Well, that is Angus, and I think he will say less of himself than I think he should. So 3 questions were circulated, and we hope to hear from especially the doctoral students about those 3 questions. And I think the introduction has already been made for Angus and myself. I will add some important details that might have been left out in the introduction. That Angus is married to Helen, and they have 3 children who are older, now looking at getting out of home. That is important for this African gathering. And Kiama Mugambi is the husband to but 1 wife. It's important to clarify that. And we have 3 children, and we live here in Nairobi. And Angus is joining us from Oxford. So 3 questions were raised, and some documents were circulated. I do want to mention something that was pointed out by Auntie Mary today about a small errata that does not change the content of the review article that talks about publishing in Africa. And I just want to correct that and say that ACI is not Presbyterian, but Presbyterian founded, and that the book Jesus in Africa that's mentioned in the article, for those of you who read it, was first published by Regnum Africa there in Ghana, and not in the West, as I had earlier mentioned. So 3 questions were raised. We will come back to those 3 questions. And I want to talk, in a brief way. So we'll have a chat about a few key points, and then we want to hear from the doctoral students, and then I'm going to draw in Angus from his experience to talk to us boldly about some of the things that, some of the realities that we encounter. And so our talk is really about publishing. And even though we are talking about researching biographies, in my own writing, I've had to do biographical work. And in a book that I recently published on the history of Pentecostalism here in Kenya, I had to do some biographical research. And I'm also connected as an international editor with the Dictionary of African Christian Biographies. And so that makes this seminar's topic especially pertinent for me, and I think for all of us. And publishing is is one of the outcomes of the labor that we put in to our academic work. So the questions that we raised, there were 3 questions, and the first is, what is your research about? And in this seminar, we are talking about biographies. But the other question is that as we research and eventually, we'll produce a dissertation that is for a very small audience, often just the panel that is examining it. But we have to ask the question beyond that: who is going to benefit most from the findings of one's research? That's a question I had to contend with after I did my after I finished and passed my PhD here at Africa International University in Kenya. And then the third question is, what is the best medium to communicate the key findings of your research? And I want to make a few remarks here about the best medium to communicate the research findings, and then talk about a particular audience and publishing for that audience. When we talk about the best medium to communicate one's key findings of their research, we have a wide array of publications that one could focus their research into. We have church manuals. So, for example, we have someone who created discipleship materials out of some graduate studies on discipleship here in Nairobi. People create books, books for popular use or books for use by congregation members. A number of people have turned their findings on family, for example, into marriage and family discipleship documents. People could communicate their key findings in pamphlets or documents to put together curricula. But the thing that would concern us, for example, here in this conversation is the medium of academic publications. Academic audiences usually will receive publications in 2 basic models over time. Journals, we have academic journals and academic books. Both of these have very specific audiences. And in fact, with journals or with books that come in particular series by academic publishers, they have very specific audiences. So when you work on your dissertation or work on your biography, then you have this. You are probably publishing within world Christianity or African history or African studies, if you want to publish in the West, or ecclesiological journals, or if you're studying a particular kind of Christianity, for example, I am interested in charismatic and Pentecostal studies. You publish in journals that will publish in a particular area. So with those 2 models, the journals or academic books, they're very specific. There are limited number of publishers who will take that material, and the distribution is limited. So the number of people that you're talking about who will want your book and consider it important or want your publication, and consider it important is very small. It's a sliver of the entire academic population. I want to make a quick mention here and say that in the last few years, and I want to credit Dr. Crichton for pointing this out. A number of publishers are now considering a third model, which is a hybrid, or sounds like a hybrid between journals and academic books. And that is a small monograph. Journals would generally be 6,000 words to 10,000 words. Academic books tend to start from 70,000 words, which is what AT&P, for example, has been considering an academic monograph. But there is an in-between kind of model that would is now considering publishing small books that are very concise and go straight into the argument and into the research that are no more than 30,000 words. We can mention that in a moment. So academic audiences, are very specific. There's limited distribution. There is a certain demand for a high level of quality. The writing, the style, and the contribution of the material to a particular academic field is taken very seriously. Now, the books for academic audiences or materials or journals are generally used for teaching and developing further research. And I'm being very general here, but within those two broad categories, there are different things that people do. With regard to teaching, they can be used for teaching, undergraduates or master students, or developing doctoral work. Or sometimes I have seen some material that is published specifically for postdoctoral audiences, or very specialized, just a few people, people in very specialized areas of a particular field. And the other side is to advance the discourse and to develop further research or to open new lines of inquiry that can then be pursued by doctoral students or other researchers. So the once choice of the audience and choice of medium to communicate, of course, will come out of what the research is about, or come out of answering the question: what is this thing? What is it that I'm trying to do, and within which field of knowledge or area of knowledge does it come from, and who is going to benefit most from the findings of one's research? I would like to give a few minutes now to hear from the doctoral students. I would like to hear from them what some of the students are researching. What is the research about, and at this point, who do you think will benefit most from the findings of your research, other than yourself and the panel that will examine you? So, if we could have a few of the doctoral students raise their voices, and perhaps I should ask the chair to moderate this for us, if the chair is there.
Yeah, I've come back. I lost connection, but I'm back now. So let's see. Can Reverend Hansen start?
Hello.
Then Eric Osiaputu, you can continue. Reverend Hansen.
Yes.
You had a general question, yeah.
Yes, Akrofi-Christaller is my name, Hansen, and my work is on Pentecostal charismatism in the Ghana Baptist Conventions. In the Ghana Baptist Convention, implication for ministry. Generally, that's what I'm researching on. And as I work, I've come across the evangelical antecedents of the Ghana Baptist Convention and the Pentecostal charismatic ethos in our country, and how it is buffeting their convention. I've also come across their strict autonomy, because every Baptist church is supposed to be autonomous, as against cooperation, they're cooperating to do the Lord's work together, and how this is also putting some pressure on convention. But generally, I just want to see how far the Pentecostal charismatic ethos has influenced the Ghana Baptist Convention.
Thank you. And who's going to benefit most from, in your view, from what you find?
First, the Baptist community, because they have a problem of this identity, whether they are evangelicals or Pentecostals, and I guess it's quite universal among the evangelical churches. I noticed that the historical mission churches, Presby, Methodist, and the rest of them, they had to face that challenge at a point in time, and they came up with the renewal movements. So I guess it cuts across. It's a tension that is ongoing between our background and what is happening, and how we can go about doing it well. I noticed that the Presbyterians and the Methodists, they've quite succeeded. So they have maintained their members through the renewal movement. So it will be good for any emerging church. I have started a new ministry, and though we are just 5 years, I realized that challenge was coming up. How far charismatic should we be? So I guess it's an ongoing problem for churches all over.
Great, thanks. Okay, yeah.
Eric, you can share now. Eric Osiakutu.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am researching on spirituality and healthcare. Specifically, I'm looking at the practice and use of traditional herbal medicine by Christians, Muslims, and primary religious people in selected Akan, Ga, and Ewe communities in Ghana. I think that the audience beyond my supervisors and examiners, I think that generally Christians may be interested in reading my work. I'm also thinking that church leaders will also be interested in reading to be able to guide church members when issues arise on the choice of healthcare facilities available. I'm also thinking that healthcare practitioners themselves, it might help them really well to know beliefs and especially the beliefs of patients about their health status, what they would opt for, and things like that. And also healthcare policy makers, particularly in our nation, for example, there's the national health insurance, and for most parts of what the national health insurance covers, it excludes some traditional herbal medicine practice. So I think that such a work would be a good read for them to see how some of those things can be rolled onto the areas they regulate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Mugambi, do you want others?
Maybe maybe one other.
Okay. Reverend Michael Naughty, can you help us?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm researching on missions and conversions in Christianity and Islam. Missions and conversions in Christianity and Islam. And basically, I'm looking at how Christianity and Islam can be faithful to their missionary call and still maintain peaceful interreligious coexistence.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is the broad area I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that this research will help both Christian and Muslim leaders to appreciate some of the human rights concerns with respect to engaging in missions in these two religions.
Mm-hmm.
And also those who are interested in the field of Christian-Muslim engagement can also benefit from this research in how missions are undertaken in Christian-dominated areas and Muslim-dominated areas by either Christians or Muslims. Why people, for example, go through some sense of persecution for the religious choices they make, in spite of the universal framework on the freedom of religions that Christianity and Islam subscribe to. So I believe that those who have interest in this field of religion and human rights, Christian-Muslim relations, and how to build peaceful interreligious societies will benefit from this project.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you, Chair, for moderating that for us. This is very important work, and I'm keen to hear. A lot of these are areas that I'll be very keen. The Muslim Christian engagement. That's something that we are very well aware of in East Africa, for example. The question of charismatization of historic mission churches and so on is a subject that I have spent a lot of time on and have written about as well, and also the question of health, alternative health care systems, and how Christians engage with that. So these are important things. Now, allow me to be honest here and talk about my own journey. When I did my PhD and finished, I spent 4 years of really just hard work, research, going into archives and retrieving information, interviewing people, transcribing a lot of material, participant observation, and spent 4 years of doing that. And at the end of it, I thought, like any human being would feel, that I have the knowledge that I have is for the whole world, and invested myself in presenting this knowledge to other people, thinking that publishers would be falling over themselves for this material. I thought it was important material, and it was important material, and so I did think, I spent some time after my PhD trying to rewrite it into a book, and I learned a number of lessons which I'll be sharing, shortly about that process, and would hope that this would be something that would help you, even as I share a little bit about from a perspective of now being an editorial manager of a publisher here on the continent. But I think it is important for us to have an understanding. We read books from Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, some of the other Edinburgh, and so on, and would like to publish with them because we have something that we need to share, or something that we want to share. But how does that publishing world work? And this is where I want to bring in Dr. Crichton to come and share with us a little bit about how publishing works on a global scale, and give us some insight about some of the Western models and their implications for us as Africans here.
Dr. Mugambi, thank you very much. Let me share a slide with you, which I will work through briefly. Let us go from here. So there is a handout which will be circulated afterwards, which will expand on this in much more detail, but essentially asks what happens if we decide to publish our research in the global north with a publisher in that part of the world. What does that terrain look like? And what do you have to be aware of? And this handout will really go into that in really quite detail and at length. There's about 10 pages describing that. So this is just really sort of 5-minute summary to help you begin to work out what some of that terrain is like. And the number one thing that I want to impress on you, that publishing in the global north is shaped by global north paradigms. It has to be. At the end of the day, publishers have to be business people. We receive manuscripts, we have to invest in them significant financial resources to turn them into a published book. Your manuscript will go through a wide range of stages which skilled professionals will work on, all of whom have to be paid to finally print the book and for it to be sold. And publishers will only consider books for publication if they think they can recoup their investment in one way or another. And so if you work with a publisher in the global north, it will be shaped by those paradigms of the global north. So what is the audience that will be buying these books? Well, for Christianity, for an African Christianity book, the primary audience will be world Christianity scholars in academic institutions in the global north. Now, I don't need to tell the audience of Akrofi-Christaller that world Christianity is a field of study that has developed very significantly over the last 70 years. We have with us one of the living ancestors of that pioneering journey, Professor Andrew Walls, and of course, the founding rector of ACI, Kwame Bediako, was a very significant voice within that growing field. But it is still a relatively small field. So although it is growing and it is small, but small, that means that it is, from a publishing perspective, actually quite an overcrowded field. So lots of people wanting to publish in it because it is growing, but it is still new. It is still making progress and making inroads into the established academic communities of the global north, and therefore the scope actually for publishing books where one can see a return on the investment is quite limited. And therefore there are only really some publishers which will consider world Christianity titles, and the publishing economics work out, therefore, that these books often retail at high prices, because if the audience is small, what each book has to bear is a disproportionate amount of the costs for producing that book. And in the handout, I will give you a worked example where you can see, if I produce a book and I think I'm going to sell 200 copies, and I produce a book and I'm going to produce 1,000 copies, what the price of those two books has to be is very, very different. The one where you're only going to sell 200 copies, the retail cost will be about £50. If you can sell 1,000 copies, that will drop down to about £12. So here you are, you want to publish your book, world Christianity market, it's burgeoning, but it's small. Therefore, you will sell small numbers of books, and the price of the books, therefore, will be high. That will mean that everything about this, your title of publisher from Global North, will be shaped by these paradigms. The format that it takes, the price, the publication procedures, the debates will be shaped by that part of the world. And therefore, getting your scholarship to be shaped by African concerns is very much secondary. And you have to bear that in mind. The publisher's primary market is in the north. They are in the north. That is the market they can reach. Therefore, if you do decide to proceed with a publisher based in the global north, you will need to be proactive in making sure your scholarship returns to the continent of origin. And I outline in the handout ways in which you can do that. So that's just a very brief overview of what will be in the handout, which I will arrange with ACI to be distributed to you afterwards. But that just gives you a brief overview of what this terrain looks like with publishers in the global north. Dr. Mugambi, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Crichton. So, so our solution really lies in finding ways to publish our material sustainably on the continent. This is what ATNP exists to do. It is what Regnum Africa have been doing for years in West Africa, is what Cluster have done in Southern Africa for years. It is what Acton publishers have done in East Africa for years. And so ATNP is a network publisher, and we try to bring in the whole continent together, bringing publishers together, bringing resources together, publishing some books for ourselves, but also enhancing conversations like this one, so that we can begin to think more broadly on the continent and more sustainably. I do want to make some comments from what I have learned, as I promised a little earlier, before we open it up for some questions. And I want to say, when you bring your manuscript, let us say you found an African publisher, let us say you want to come to ATNP or Regnum Africa or Cluster, but for purposes of this discussion, let's talk about ATNP. So you need to tell the publisher what your material is about. And the way to do that is usually to put together a manuscript proposal, or in the US, they sometimes will call it the prospectus, the manuscript prospectus or book prospectus. And this is a document that you put together to, as it were, sell your content to your publisher, interest your publisher with your content. And this is a document, usually to be a few pages long. Sometimes they will ask for a 2-page document. Others will ask for a more elaborate document that will be 5 pages or 10 pages, or not more than 10 pages. And it outlines what your content is about. It tells the publisher, and usually the publisher will be someone who might not be an expert in the field, or the person who reads it is not an expert in the field, but it is someone who has an understanding of what their audience is as a publisher or as a publishing company. And your prospectus then tells this gatekeeper or this leader in the organization what your content is about and how it contributes, what is unique about it, and how does it contribute to the sphere of knowledge. And this is your opportunity to sell the unique point, or to let them know what the unique point of your content is. What are the key arguments in your book? How do you lay your book out? How do you break down that argument in the chapters? And what is the specific audience? And as Dr. Crichton has said, academic books will have a very specific audience. Books from Africa will fit within as a small part of a wider field. I think sometime back, African history books on African religion, books on African Christianity in some universities will not even go to a world Christianity audience. they'll go to an African studies audience, which is a much broader category fitting together with other books on politics and economics and so on. So your book proposal will talk about who your audience is. And if you're publishing a book here in Africa, then there are chances that it is easier to segment your audience and to be able to know who will benefit from the book. And then you talk about the specifics of the manuscript. Is it ready? Is it nearly ready? How long will it take for it to be ready? How many words will it have? And how many chapters does it have? Is it going to have pictures? Are the pictures going to be in color or black and white? And those kinds of details. So that proposal is a very important document for several reasons. Number one, it helps your publisher know what you're presenting and why that is important. It also helps your publisher know what chances there are of making this sustainable. And this is very important for us here in Africa because the resources are limited. Very few publishers are endowed, if any. And so publishers oftentimes will have to find funding for projects or use whatever little resources they've gotten from other projects to fund a particular project. And so it's important for them to know whether your project is going to cover for its own costs at the very least. But the other thing about a book proposal is that it helps you see your book in stark terms, and it tells you, even before you've sent your manuscript proposal to the publisher, it tells you whether you have a good proposition. Do you have a good title? Is the title catchy? I've seen some conversations on the chat about possible titles. Will the title that you have given your book interest your audience or your target audience? Now, these things are true for academic titles, but also for books for other use as well. Books for use within the church, books for training youth leaders, books for training family workers, and so on. Books for training church leadership, like ecclesiological structures, and so on. So these are important. It's a good discipline to get into. As I come to a conclusion, my process, allowed me to see some of the gaps that I had in my book, even as I presented my book proposal to a Western publisher. Now, I wrote, I think it was 8 or 9 manuscript proposals for different publishers, and out of the 8 or 9, only 2 accepted the book proposal, and one of them was interested in seeing more material. So I sent in some chapters and kept sending in the chapters. But the book proposal was the first place where I was able to see how to arrange my material in a way that was logical, in a way that was useful for people. And so, in just writing the manuscript proposal for myself, I was able to rearrange the chapters so that the argument made more sense. My hope as we share this is to help you begin to see for yourself what you need to do to get your material to the people that need it the most. Ultimately, the more specific your audience, the more specific your audience is, or the more specific you begin to think, more specifically you begin to think of your audience for your book, the better it will be for you. Even though there may be others who will be interested in the material, it is important to know, who will benefit the most from your material, and you can target your material towards them. Now, for many of you with doctoral work, material may be helpful for leaders. It may be helpful for the church. There may be some things that will emerge out of it that will help workers, lay workers. But for some of you, your material is going to be very important for teaching purposes, and it's going to be very important for advancing new lines of inquiry and opening up new lines of research. And for those for whom that will be true, you will need to consider putting together an academic book, even as you think of doing publishing journals. I said I would come back to to new models that are coming up. These have not yet caught on, but publishers are now beginning to consider shorter books that are very concise, 30,000 words. And Cambridge have a model like that one. Oxford has a model like that one. I know of those two for now. I will not be surprised if there are a few other publishers who have tried working with smaller books. I know that Orbis also have a number of smaller books that are have something important to contribute, but it's not necessarily said in 70,000 words. It's said in half of that. And those are models that we're going to begin to see here on the continent. But my encouragement, especially for doctoral students, is to begin to consider, what are you going to do with your knowledge? It is one thing to work hard and put together your material and pass your doctoral examination. But then, we then become a part of a small community of scholars who have a responsibility to the rest of Africa to share our knowledge. I think I've given an overview, and would like possibly to get back to the chair, who could guide us on the next thing. Perhaps get some clarifications, and then field questions. And would be very keen to hear questions from the doctoral students as well, or others who have recently finished, who would like to publish their work.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mugambi. So, as he said, the floor is open for clarifications initially, and then we can go on to other things. Dr. Mugambi,
Yes.
can I just start? So, supposing someone wants to publish, is there an upfront amount that he has to pay? Can you tell a little bit about the process of funding?
Yes. So books that are published are funded in several different ways. The way we have in our the way that publishing is done, that we have in our minds, is that the publisher will come in and foot the bill for the copy editing, foot the bill for the typesetting, and then foot the bill for the proofreading, and then pay for the printing of the books, and then pay for the marketing of the books. And so that is fully funded by the publisher or by the press.
Hello, Dr. Mugambi. We lost him.
Maybe put up with video.
Sorry. Okay. Am I
Okay,
back?
great. Yes, you're back.
Yes. So where the printing press foots the bill in anticipation that they're going to be able to get back their money. Then there is the complete opposite model, where the publishers rent out their services to authors, and oftentimes they're called vanity publishers, where someone comes in with the money and they fund the entire cost of publishing their book, and
It's like we've lost him again.
Yeah, where someone would pay for perhaps for the copy editing, if there's some heavy copy editing work that needs to be done, and then the publisher would fund the rest. And there are different varieties of models. There are people who get funding, for example, from an organization because they are publishing in the interests of an NGO and so on. But to answer your question, amongst all of those ways, and Dr. Crichton and I have done quite a bit of work reflecting. So sorry, my internet keeps coming on and off. I'm not sure, but the point I'm making is that we need to find ways to do publishing sustainably, and that requires a mix of elements, putting together some elements to make sure that the books are sustainable, that we print and put together books that we can sell and be able to fund from within the continent.
Thank you very much. In fact, there's a comment here that AT&P has been set up to deal with the problem of distribution. Yeah, okay. Are there any other comments, questions?
Chairman.
Yes, Prof. Lai.
Chairman. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Mugambi and Dr. Crichton. Some of our people have done some publications quite recently. I would want to hear their voice. Wyeth and Stork and others, Dr. Gazy, Dr. Sulisa. What was the experience? I know it took them quite a number of years, for them to get these things through. What is the experience? Can they share with us, especially those who are contemplating, publishing?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we allow that. So,
okay. Can I come in?
Yes, do.
My work was on the Bible translation, and I also serve on the board of SIL. So they were very happy with the work and wanted to publish it. So they took the initiative. So they took up, and we had to work on the thesis to make it readable, to make it publishable. And so they took the whole thing. I didn't from the beginning to the end. All that I did was helping with the editors, going with them up and down, asking me to clarify this, check on this, and all that. So the funding and everything was done by them, and so they are even doing the marketing and everything. So that's, as Dr. Mugambi said, it was an organization, so they have that vested interest to see Bible translation, and they found what I did among two ethnic groups was like telling their story to the wider publicity, publics. So they took interest in publishing that.
Thank you. Dr. Gazy, you want to share?
Well, thank you. I have some few personal concerns, maybe by way of starting, that I felt that as an institute, we are a bit more proactive, as it were, in encouraging graduates to publish, particularly graduates who find themselves as faculty at the institute. So in my case, I don't remember any conscious engagement on that part. So it was more of a personal initiative. Of course, encouragement came here and there, but I was hoping for a more deliberate institutional approach, not just from individual senior scholars or colleagues. And so this publishing with Whips and Stock actually came as a suggestion from one of our adjunct faculty, Professor Tony Barcom. But at that time, I had just finished, so I told him that, well, after spending all these years, I wasn't so much ready to go through editorial work to publish this. So I needed some bit of rest. And this will come after 4 years following the graduation, that I'll pick it up again with him. And so through his contacts with one at Whips and Stock, that was followed through. And of course, with the help of my supervisor, senior supervisor, and then my academic mother, for that matter, the process of application and all went through. I think Whips and Stock, because of the series they have and some other clause or benefits, for example, I think the ability to be able to reprint in Africa, and that slot is there. And so that was, in terms of cost, also relatively cheaper. Dr. Blasu has also published with them. If he's online, he can also share his experience. But that's my little cry, I should put it. And I'm happy with ATMP, because if there's such a collaboration with the Institute, then that cry for the institutional push, a more conscious, deliberate drive to encourage graduates to publish, not to wait for a longer time. If that is there through ATMP, I think it's a welcome news. And good to see you, Kiama, and to hear your voice.
It's good to see you, Dr. Gazy.
Yes, in passing that, together with Angus, our meeting will certainly come on at some point. I've not forgotten about your request.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Gazy. So thanks for sharing.
Yes.
Rob, did you have,
Yes, Dr. Walton, yes. Maybe this is a concern I hope that Kiama can address. Maybe Dr. Crichton can also look at. I deliberately wanted some of our colleagues to share with us the experience with publishing, because they both, or the three of them, have published with Western publishers. We still have a problem on our hands. You see, having access to copies is the issue. And that's how, ATMP has been set up, to navigate, this problem. Because we're in Africa, research has been done about Africans. The books have been published in the global north, and we don't have access to them. And sometimes, even if you do, they're expensive. Now, I'm thinking about cluster publications and some of the publishing, wings in East Africa and all that. But I'm thinking about, is it possible for us to get them published online, ebooks, that make them readily available and accessible? Of course, people will say, students, once they download, they may have problems, maybe reading all that. But it is made available, with very little expenses. If you look at cluster publications, for instance, or what the University of Utrecht in the Centrum that they publish, for their students, it is essentially the thesis. Very little is done by way of even editing or something, but it is made available so that students can make reference to it. The situation of having to wait 3, 4, 5 years, sometimes the book is never published at all. I'm wondering whether that option is still available, ebooks, where they can be made available, readily accessible to begin with, even if eventually we have in mind making paperback print publications.
Thank you. That's a good question, and it's a discussion that is very much alive with AT&P. I'll make some quick comments and invite Dr. Crichton to say a word or two. Online publishing, distribution, the creation of ebooks. Majority of the platforms that have been created to distribute ebooks are actually Western platforms. The largest of them being the Amazon platform, the Kindle platform. Now, assume that let us say that Kiama has done his PhD, and he prepares his manuscript to meet the standard of an academic book, and there's a cost to that. I don't know what one would put, but for example, copy editing can be content editing, and then copy editing, and then typesetting. All of that, the cost can accumulate. Let us say that the cost is, I don't know, $500, $1,000 of that. The challenge becomes if you convert it into, for example, a PDF. Then, as soon as you sell the first 20 copies or the first 30 copies at, I don't know, $2 a piece, then you find, you have $60 and you have a balance of $940 in terms of cost to the cost to the publisher or cost to the author, depending on who paid for that. So one of the big questions that we need to answer here on the continent is how the cost of digital distribution is covered. Now, one could say, well, our PhDs are good enough quality, and we can just distribute them as they are. And there are advantages to that because you can then disseminate them. In fact, different universities are now offering PhD thesis for open source. The Jesuit Historical Institute in Africa has a thesis bank where you can find, I forget now, I think it would be 800 or 900 PhD and master's theses from all over Africa on different topics. So that's so that is already happening. So people are distributing that, but you also will agree with me that work does need to be done on PhD thesis to enable the document that is written for a panel of 5 or 6 examiners and readers to convert that into something that can be usable in academia. And the cost of that is what digital distribution has not yet resolved. And it is something that we're looking at as AT&P. But in the meantime, I think as we try to have those discussions, we're trying to figure out what are the models. And it could well be that we need to either find lower cost models or open source models of distributing ebooks, but then that are able to enable us to sell the ebooks at a lower cost, but also sell large enough numbers of them to make this sustainable. Dr. Crichton, what would you say?
I think I would separate out 2 issues that Prof has raised there. One is, what do we do about our African theological content that goes north and we can't get it back south? Because it gets a northern publishing wrapper around it, which is one, can be expensive to highly expensive. I mean, there are compendia out there on African Christianity whose retail price is $200. Now, that is unaffordable to any individual I know of in the world, and unaffordable to most institutions on the African continent. And yet it contains leading scholarship on African Christianity. How do we get that material back home? So that is one issue. And then secondly, how does digital help or not help? Now, with the first issue, ATMP has made some inroads in applying to Global North publishers for the rights for Africa to some of those titles, and that's something we are working on. And the handout that you will have access to has got advice in it. If you do go the Global North route, how can you ensure that your content comes back south? So you can follow that up. Secondly, I think Dr. Mugambi has already made, I think, a very important distinction with digital publishing. So, Prof, when we talk about, say, theses by students from ACI, if we're saying we want the thesis to be available, well, in that case, as it stands, once the student has completed it and submitted it and it's been passed and so forth, then yes, that could go into an open access digital repository. There are a number of them, institutions have them, there are Africa-wide ones, freely available. Okay, the cost of running that has to be sustained by an institution, but there is not the investment in terms of sifting through what's going to be published, what's not, editing, copy editing, typesetting, and so forth. None of those bills have been incurred, as Dr. Mugambi has indicated. As soon as you get into those kind of publication bills, you need some kind of cost recovery mechanism. And that either has to be the author pays for it or the user pays for it. And the challenge then of digital is to develop an effective cost recovery mechanism. So although digital saves massively in terms of print costs and distribution costs, it still incurs the same pre-print costs as any print title would.
Thank you very much. May I say that the time is 4 minutes after 2, but we don't always have AT&P and we have technical problems at the beginning. So I would plead the indulgence of all of you would go to a maximum of 2:15 and then we'll close. Prof. Walls, is your hand up or this was the old one? Okay, I think this is the old.
It is the
okay,
old,
yeah.
It is the old one, but
okay.
But perhaps I could just say one thing. Dr. Crichton made at the beginning the point that publishers are in business to sell books. The doctoral thesis is not in itself to produce a readable book. The doctoral thesis is part of a long process of apprenticeship to the scholarly life. You learn the ways and the difficulties and the go through a whole series of exercises to prove that you're learning the trade. So at the end, it's not too surprising if what you have produced, yes, meets all the requirements of the examiners, but it doesn't produce a book which a publisher thinks he can sell to a readership of people who really want to read this. So I think we've got to be prepared for a second stage after the production of the thesis, is making it readable, making it reader-friendly, making it interesting, taking the reader through, forgetting examiners and thinking of, you can't forget academic, that many of your readers will be academic people who will expect academic standards and academic correctness. But you have also this responsibility to get people to want to read it. Because it's important, because you've got something to say. And it should also have a flow, should be able to take the reader along. So I just make the plea that we think, while we're doing this academic and scholarly writing, of readers and of making it readable and of wanting to share with other people what truths that we see coming to ourselves out of our work. The more we can do that before the thesis is presented, the better. So I would plead that we just think all the time of readability in everything that we're doing. And it does mean also that there may be a gap between the successful presentation of a thesis and the production of a readable book.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure that we are leaving out MTH dissertations in all of this. I guess they can also develop theirs in another way. All right, Hansen, Akrofi-Christaller, can you?
Yes, sir, Dr. Walton, thank you very much. I'll make it very brief. I think Prof. Andrew Walls has spoken my mind. Because I remember Dr. Mugambi said, out of those who write might emerge teachers, people who just want to reduce the high-sounding theological arguments into simple ones which the laity can follow. So as he was presenting, I was just wondering whether this is just about academic books or any other topic that somebody who is a teacher, somebody who is a writer, things can be prepared and sent to the ground roots, the grassroots is also acceptable by ATNP. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Like I mentioned a little earlier, ATNP has devoted itself to a very specific audience. We have, academic, theological audience. We do our books really for people who are for institutions and for studies, and we have even within academia we have some very specific areas that we look at, theology, Christianity and contemporary issues, and so on. So that for us is the audience that we devote ourselves to, and it is where we believe we can be able to connect with our audience.
Thank you.
Reverend Hansen, I think that we are about done with all those who want to share. If there's no one who has something burning on his heart or her heart, then we'll be drawing the curtain on today's program. So, Dr. Mugambi, can you give your concluding remarks, and maybe also Dr. Angus?
Well, thank you so much for having us on this program. Our hope at the end of this is that anyone who has some material that is publishable, that has some knowledge that is out there to be shared, that you would put in some work to enable the material to be shared with others. I take seriously and very reverently the advice given by Professor Walls, who I'm so happy to see here, that it is important for us to make our material readable. And we have devoted ourselves as ATNP to also talk about that and say, what can we as Africans who are speaking English for me, which is a fourth language, what can I do to make sure that my material is clear without losing my African identity? And so we need to be thinking about that as we think about making our material available. Dr. Crichton.
I think I would like to echo those comments. Say it's a great privilege to be with you and part of these discussions. And we would both welcome the opportunity to support and encourage these kind of publications that above all will be available in Africa, for the benefit and service of the church and the mission of God there, as well as a benediction to the church and to the wider world. So that is very much what we are committed to at ATNP, and which I pursue in my role at SPCK. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Angus. Thank you very much, Dr. Mugambo and ATNP. Thank you for all the piece of information and the advice that you've given to us. All right. We thank God for the day, beginning with Dr. Ehenio. But even before then, the refreshing devotion by Dr. Settles. Dr. Ehenio was on the science of archival reconstruction, and we learned quite a lot from the struggles that she went through in the composition of the biography of Reverend Theophilus Opoku. And then Auntie Koklu gave us a bit on funeral brochures and what we can glean from them. And we've just had the presentation from ATM. It's been a good day, and we thank God for all that He's given to us through this day. We will be asking Professor Thomas Odro, President of the Good News Theological Seminary, to give us the closing prayer. Prof. Odro.
Hello?
Yeah, Prof.
Do you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Let's pray. Gracious Father, we thank you for calling us into the ministry of theological education and all that matters in our Christian walk. Thank you, Lord, for granting us the opportunity to meet via this means to talk about the ministry. Thank you also for granting others the privilege and opportunity to take the lead and to lead us into the paths of scholarship. We pray that, Lord, you bless us and continually bless Akrofi-Christaller Institute and all the lecturers and professors and students and donors, so that we will continually be briefed on the work. We bless your holy name. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Amen.
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 So,
should I say that tomorrow is the last day? So we continue tomorrow. It's important to know that tomorrow is the last day.
Thank you very much, Prof. Lai. Yes, indeed, tomorrow is the last day. For those of us at ACI and any others who want to join, we'll be having our normal Wednesday devotions before then, and then we'll continue with the last day of the doctoral seminar. A blessed afternoon to you all. Bye-bye.
And to you too. Thank you. Hi, Thomas.
Prof. Lai. Yes, indeed, tomorrow is the last day. For those of us at ACI and any others who want to join, we'll be having our normal Wednesday devotions before then, and then we'll continue with the last day of the doctoral seminar. A blessed afternoon to you all. Bye-bye.
And to you too. Thank you.